At the marathon distance, a pacer guides your finish time. In a 100-mile ultra, your pacer could save your life. This week on the Mean Grit podcast, we recap Jacob Cheney's valiant effort at the Zion 100, together with his three pacers who went out with one goal: to get their runner to the finish line. Listen in as we recount the highs and lows of a race so beautiful and so technical, you just might die.
Welcome to the Mean Grit podcast. I'm your host, James Julian. We are here to talk about the Zion's 100. I have the runner, Jacob.
Hello.
And what I would like to think are the people who, without him, he wouldn't have finished, his pacers, including myself, John, and James. So we're going to dive right into the heat of things, both literally and figuratively. I woke up that morning and was tracking you. You were at 12-minute clips, and I was excited. So I was there by 12:30, gearing up, getting ready, and I was meeting some of the other pacers and the other crews that were there. Your crew chief and wife showed up, and all of a sudden, I started to think that I might not even take a step on the track, on the trails, and because you were in a bad spot. Let's start there. Miles 38 to 40, around there. What was going on?
Miles 38 to 40, it started to warm up for one. And we were coming down some pretty crappy trails. So I was feeling pretty beat up. We had some good slick rock that was really tearing my feet up pretty good. But then it was really the heat. I came down from one of the aid stations and got on this exposed dirt road. And the heat just started to compound. Like it was like a light switch just flipped. All of a sudden I just was like, I do not feel good. Started getting pretty like gross feeling, pretty nauseous. Started dry heaving. And then I did actually throw up because I was throwing some symptoms of like heat exhaustion.
Yeah. When I was talking to your wife, she threw up, couldn't control your heart rate.
Yeah, but I was just bouncing like crazy.
And this was the first hot day I think we've had all year. I mean, we all train up here in northern Utah in the mountains. It's cold. In fact, we're very cold right now. But so we didn't get a lot of heat training prior to the race. And then all of a sudden, you're in 90+ degree weather and an aid station that's 8 miles from the previous one.
Yep. That was one of the other things that happened. So 8 miles, I ran out of water about 5 miles in. So I was about 3 miles to water, and I'm already dry heaving when I did run out of water.
Yeah.
And so it was just a compounding, not good situation. And I texted my wife in a private chat because I didn't want everyone to know, right? Because I was like, I'm not in a good spot, and I hadn't been in a good spot for probably a mile. So probably mile 42 was when I was like, not 42,
Well, I think
40,
it was about 40.
41, where I was like, I am hurting right now.
Right.
I was like, but I don't want everyone to know that. Yeah, I don't. And so I was dry heaving, and finally, once I threw up, I was like, all right, I got to text at least my wife. My wife's got to know what's going on so they can at least be prepared for me when I get into the aid station. I text my wife, and I'm like, hey, I think I've got early onset heat stroke, like heat exhaustion, just threw up.
Yeah.
Not doing great. And I want to hear, because I was still a few miles out from the aid station, I want to hear what was going on at the aid station at this point.
Well, it was really interesting because I think, John, you had texted about that time, like, hey, hope everything's going well. Let us know when you pick up James and this James to keep going. And I'm like, oh, gosh, you're right. Like, we're not taking anything public yet. And your father-in-law, who is also part of your crew, I could see kind of a fatherly instinct start to kick in because he's going up to the med station at the aid station there and asking them questions and getting advice and relaying that to your wife. And I'm seeing other people come in and they all look like death. And so I'm imagining you at 4 miles out, no water, in the heat, thinking, yeah, he's not going to make it. Not going to make it. And so I was gearing up, getting ready because I knew it was hot. So I had 2 frozen water bottles in my hand for myself, just getting ready. And I just knew that we had to get out there. So I threw one in my bag. We filled up another bottle and I just ran out there with water. And as I'm going, I'm passing people who are just disoriented. And I'm asking, are you okay? You okay? Do you need help? No, I'm good. I'm good.
I'm going to find my runner because it is hot out here and people are not doing good. Somebody else just said, hey, help a guy out up here because they don't have water. I don't think they were planning on it being this hot. It is hot.
Because it is a 100-mile race.
Yeah.
And so you're going to get that.
Yeah.
And you guys have been 40 miles in. And so I didn't want to push because water was a scarce resource at that point. So when I got to you and you told me that you had just been sitting down and kind of resting, you were looking better than I expected.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was a bit of panic at the aid station. And when we got in, I remember, we walked back, got you cooled down, and you had the attitude of like, let's just go through the motions here, and at the very end we'll kind of make a decision. But from what I observed, you weren't in a state that you were gonna say, I'm done. You know, you kind of had that attitude of somebody's got to pull the plug here, but it's not gonna be me.
Yeah.
And I remember Paul saying, oh, let's get you in and lay you down. And I said, if he lays down, we're done.
Done.
and I don't think he liked that because, again, that fatherly instinct was kicking in. So he managed to get you in a chair, started fueling, changing shoes. And eventually we got back out there, which was, in my mind, a miracle. But did you have any thoughts at that point of, hey, let's call it quits?
I did. Before you even got to me, I was sitting there going, oh man, not again, right? Like, I'm like, this sucks. Like,
Yeah.
And you have to realize, like, yes, it's still in the first half of the race, but you're 40 miles in. Like, you've done 40 miles on your legs. And so you're already hurting pretty bad. But yeah, I was sitting there and I was just like, I probably have to bail.
Yeah.
And then right before you got to me, the thought crossed my head. I was like, you've got 3 guys out here that have all sacrificed their time, plus your wife and your father-in-law for your crew. They've sacrificed their time to come out and be prepared to come help you and pace you. And you haven't even given them a freaking chance. You are not bailing right now.
Yeah.
And so when you got to me and dumped water on my head, I was sitting there and my brain was still like, quit, just quit, just quit. But I was like, hell no.
Yeah.
I did not make everyone go out of their way to bail before I've even reached halfway.
Yeah.
Like, screw that. We're going. So I got to the aid station and I was like, if someone else pulls the plug on me because they think I'm doing worse, that's a different story. But I'm not pulling.
Yeah.
And like, even if I just death march the rest of this dang race, like, I'm going.
Yeah.
Right. And so in that moment, before you guys had really even done anything, you 3 kept me in that race because I knew that I was not taking that opportunity away from you.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate that. It's funny because I was planning on showing up at 1:30 and probably finishing around 6 or 7 if we were rough. It was 3:30 when we left that aid station.
Yep.
And so I'm like, well, this is a totally different race.
Yeah.
And we left that aid station, and I was thinking, like, no one had yet replied to your text. And so I didn't know if Lydia was texting you on the side saying, like, hey, adjust your time, or
No, I was looking for, the time in and the time out on the aid stations, and just nothing was coming in, and nothing was updating, and nothing was updating. And, I had seen some of the other times where you checked in and out with some of the other runners, and they'd moved on, and
Right.
you hadn't. And I was just wondering, okay, what's happening? But then I noticed that, some of the aid stations runners just missed.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't have them checking in and out. Like, somehow their timing chip just didn't get picked up or whatnot. So I really didn't know what was going on.
Right. And I think we all quickly realized that the trackers were hit and miss.
Yeah.
Because you would sit at a station, for a while, and then all of a sudden you were at the next station, and it jumped really quick. So we get out of that aid station, and it's kind of just a slow pace.
Mm-hmm.
You asked for my life story, I gave it to you. We had time, and we were moving at about that pace. But I think just to kind of keep this moving, we get to the next aid station. Well, first we come up over this ridge, and we look over, and we see the aid station, and you tell me, like, I got to get to that aid station for your gut was saying, I need to get there.
Yeah.
And like, it's just right there. However, we had to go around this massive ridge. It probably took us another 20, 30 minutes before we got there. But once we got there and left, you were like a whole new person.
Yeah. So that from when we left that aid station at 44 to that next aid station, I basically consider my recoup time, where it was my body had to process all the water and all the salts and all the foods I'd intaken, and I couldn't run, like I just couldn't. And then I was backed up, like my system was just in distress, right? So I get to that aid station, I'm like, I need that aid station. Now I am clenching.
Yeah.
I was like, I need it.
Yeah.
And we don't, and you don't just straight shot. You're like in and out, in and out. But yeah, once we got to the aid station, I went to the bathroom, and it took me a little bit of time. But we left that aid station. All of a sudden, I was like, "Oh, I can do this."
Yeah.
Like it was like the light switch had been flipped back on, right? And my system was like cooperating, and my feet hurt, but it was they hurt more walking at this point than they do running, and so it was just, let's move.
That was an interesting paradigm for me, because when I did my 100, my feet hurt, but I also couldn't run. But you got to the point where it's like, I would rather run than just walk, because my feet are going to hurt either way, and it might as well run.
Yeah.
And so we were looking for any type of trail that would allow us to run. We got up to the mesa, which was one of the bigger climbs. And although we didn't run, we were putting in a solid pace.
Look at that sunset. We're almost 60 miles in. Oh, well, Jacob's 60 miles in. I am 18 and a bit in. Woo! And we've got 13 to go. So, for me. Sorry, man.
It's all right. I signed up for this.
We're feeling good.
We flew up that road, honestly.
Yeah, and we snatched some souls on the way up. There was a silent assassin who snuck past us without saying a word. I remember, but other than that, like, we were just
sure we caught him later in the night.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we did too. But we get up on the top, and thankfully you had now gotten to a place where you were feeling good, because it was now getting dark, and we thankfully my family met us at the road crossing to give me my headlamp. Otherwise, we were going to be going off of just one headlamp, because neither of us were expecting darkness at that point,
or to be out as long as we did.
Yeah.
That was interesting, because we got in that dark, and that trail got pretty technical. That climb, it was pretty hard to follow. I don't know that it was really a trail, more kind of just bushwhacking, honestly. And we were just going off the one headlight for a while, because we were trying to save, because we knew both our headlights didn't last very long. We're like, we don't know how long we're going to be out here. But thankfully, I was feeling pretty good. And you were on my case about fueling and drinking and fueling and drinking. Have you drinking more? Have you drinking more? But we just got into that section, and we eventually had to turn both lights on because I got pretty technical. But we just kept pounding the miles down, and anywhere that was decent enough to run without like rolling an ankle or something, I feel like we were.
I was so impressed that you literally were choking down gels every time that alarm went off, and I thought, ugh, I couldn't do it. But you did it, and we were good to get fuel in. But I want to hear from these other guys. But let's talk just that last part. I'll set the scene leading up, and then you can take us the rest of the way into the aid station. But we were making our way down. We had left the aid station. I had a water pack on my back and 2 flasks in the front, and I was carrying an extra one for you, and you had 2 flasks.
Uh-huh.
And it was 8.6 miles. And I ran out of water, and you ran out of water
Again,
again.
for the 3rd time that day.
And I was kicking myself because I have a liter pack, but I didn't fill it up at that last aid station.
Yeah.
And I started to kind of have that panic set in that, like, of course, we're going to struggle now that the sun's gone down and we're going to run out of water. And I don't know what was going on in your mind, but I was starting to get a little nervous.
Uh-huh.
And then we came around this corner, and there was a water station, and it was like heaven sent. Like we
Yeah.
both, like at a scene out of a movie, like just filling up the bladders and just dumping them on our face and drinking them. Like it was so refreshing and so just like giving life to our race, because like you said, it was so technical. We couldn't really run too much except for certain parts. But then we hit that place and we were on a high.
Yeah.
And then
we turned the corner. Think of it as like a 3-way, right? So you got a single track coming this way and just a turn off. Water station is sitting like
right in the middle,
literally a foot away from the turn. You turn this corner and all of a sudden you're just looking down a straight cliff. And you're like, wait, what? And that's basically what it was this mile long, I'm going to call it a down climb. It wasn't a trail. It was like we were stepping off waist high boulders onto some sandy, slick stuff. And if you slipped,
it was
you were going
scary.
off.
And there were a few spots that looked like people had
gone off.
And at this point, I mean, I had been on my feet for 28 miles. You had been on for what, 68? 68, 67. So neither of us were in a spot to be technically climbing down this.
And it's like, what, 10, 11 o'clock at night?
Yeah. So it
with
was
our little puny headlamps.
So sketchy. There was a point where we had to quasi-rappel down with a rope that had knots in it. And I was honestly a little, that was the scariest part for me.
I was pretty worried, but I was sitting there going, there's no other way around this. Like, we have to go down this. And I was glad, it was called Flying Monkey, right? I was glad I hadn't looked into it, because otherwise I would have been anticipating it.
Yeah.
Right. And so in that way, it was a little bit of like a blessing that I hadn't looked too closely at the course in that. But that downhill was just brutal. But it was just like, well, I can either stop and complain, or we can keep going. And yeah, sure, we're going slow. We were doing like a 45-minute mile.
Yeah.
Right. But that's how technical it was.
Right.
We came off that trail. I said a lot of bad words about a lot of bad people. And we came into that aid station, and John heard me and a few others. And I said something along the lines of, whoever the picked that trail has issues.
It was pretty wild. But we were so relieved to get on that road. We ran a 12-minute mile, the last mile.
Yep.
Which we hadn't, I don't think we did.
A 45-minute mile hill prior.
I don't think we did a 12-minute mile any other time, maybe once. But that it was good. But that's when you picked up John. And I'm curious, because in your Strava post, you said that was the most difficult section.
And so our section was the most technical, and it was the recovery section. John's section was the middle of the night, and the trail was stupid hard to follow. It was kind of funny coming into that aid station, because I've ran with John at like group runs, and we've had a few other interactions outside of that. Came in, and John was like this like Papa Bear almost. I came in and he's like ripping my shoes off and just like, we're going, come on, let's go.
Yeah.
Just had all this energy, which was perfect at the time because it was the middle of the night. And it ended up being really good, especially because we got up on that trail, and that trail was just, it was more slick rock. It was technical, but it was so hard to follow. If I'd been by myself, it would have taken me all night to make it around that 2-mile loop at the top.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was about an 18-mile section that I went with you. And for a lot of it, it was just, some single track to get started, and then we hit a fire road, and the fire road was like almost 4 miles long, 3-4 miles long, up to the top of this mesa. And you get up to the top of the mesa, of course, the temperature's now dropping a little bit. So, thankful that you changed and got some dry clothes on. And
It was what, 48 degrees?
yeah, it felt chilly. It felt chilly up there. And, and there were warm pockets. You'd get down into some of the trees and you could feel the warm air, but then you'd pop out and it would be cool again. And, it was very difficult. I was happy that I had downloaded the course map onto my watch, because they had dots painted on the rocks, probably for the bike trails up there, but they weren't bright. There was the fluorescence of the dots was not great. And I think that the flag markers that they had for the course were probably 10 years old, because there was almost no reflective material left on them. And so we're plodding along, and it was quite technical up there, up and down boulders and around and in washes and outside of washes, then up over the top of rocks. And I would just look at the map on my watch and be like, okay, we're going to turn left up here, so keep looking. But it took a long time to muddle through that 3-4 mile section, just and not get lost. And we still got off trail
a bunch of times,
4 or 5 times.
Yeah. I wanna paint this picture a little bit better, for those the three of us. Well, at least I met Jacob and John at group runs on Wednesdays.
Yep.
And I was initially invited by our friend Zach, who's 23. You're 23. And so when I first went, I was really nervous about the young kids outrunning me, because I'm 40 years old. I've just 4 years into running, and I was like, God, these young college kids are gonna smoke me. When in reality, it was the guys who are over 50 that are dominating these mountains out here, John included. And so when you talk about kind of having this, maybe a different confidence, knowing that you're with somebody who you've been in probably just as bad conditions, maybe a little bit more awake and a little bit more brighter. But what did that do for you to know that you had somebody like John, who's an experienced runner, at least in some pretty gnarly terrain?
It made me just confident. I know we're going to get through it. I wasn't worried about him, right? And I wasn't worried about him being able to help me. I knew he knew what was going on, and I knew that he would keep us on track.
Yeah.
Which was especially crucial that night section. John probably got the least talkative Jacob, because it's 2 a.m. and I'm just sitting there eyes are open.
Well, and while they had really great aid stations there, but they didn't have the volunteers that were helping the runners. Like if you walked up and asked for something,
They'd help.
They'd help. Or all the food options. I mean, it was really well stocked.
Yeah.
But in some of the other races that I've come into, it's like,
what can we help?
Yeah, it's like the maitre d's there. What do you need? Give me your bottles, I'll fill. What do you want?
Right.
And they really didn't offer any of that.
And I'm wondering if that's
that I saw,
because of the time that you were there. Because I remember at the top of the mesa, man, these little kids, this army of kids came running out. What can we get for you filling up? And it was so funny, because like they dropped caps on the ground, but they were just doing the best that they could. And,
right.
And I did see some other ladies, so I'm sure at 3 a.m.
It was just pretty hit or miss on which aid stations throughout the day. Some aid stations just had like a ton of volunteers, and some you'd roll up and there'd be like two.
Yeah.
And they're just sitting there just making quesadillas as fast
doing
as
the
they
best
can.
They could. That's so interesting.
We just, one of the things I just wanted to do was try and just take care of all of that stuff, so that at the aid stations, Jacob could just take care of himself.
Right.
Go get food. I'll get your liquids. I'll get your stuff filled up. I'll dump, whatever fuel you need in your bottles. You go to the bathroom. You do whatever you need to do.
Right.
And when you're ready to go, I've got you covered.
Yeah. Was there ever a concern when he was with you that he wouldn't finish, or was it you felt pretty certain?
No, in fact, when we got up to the top of the mesa, it was pretty technical, but it got a little bit less technical about a mile out from the aid station. So you climb up to the top on this fire road, and the aid station's right there, and then you do a big loop on the mesa, hit the aid station again on the way down. So about a mile out, it starts to get a little bit less technical, and Jacob just took off.
Yeah.
And I think we probably passed 2 or 3, maybe 4 people in that last mile, just going in, and he was going up and down, and I remember looking up, and people would see him or hear him coming, and they would just like step to the side,
Yeah,
and off, and we just go right past him.
yeah,
And so that was really cool, to be that late in the race, and he's got a burst of energy, and we're just
Right.
pushing. I remember making a comment to you at one point saying, Jacob, man, you're going to make me sweat. It's the middle of the night, so come on. It was really great.
That's awesome, and I think that's a good transition. James, you've been very quiet this whole time, and it's now time to kind of turn some light over to you. We just met last week. In fact, I know nothing about you other than that you're a family friend. Is that correct?
Yep.
And you were running together when you guys didn't finish.
Yeah.
You had attempted a 100 and it didn't quite get there. And now you're here to pace him for his final, 10 miles?
About 10 and a half.
So I'm curious, kind of, what were your thoughts? What was your experience coming into this?
Well, it sounds like you guys had the hardest bits, because when I showed up at like 5, and then Jacob got in at 6, it ended up just being kind of a nice little morning jog for me.
Okay. So you were primed and
There was
ready.
jogging
it
involved.
was pretty easy.
Yeah.
And he was in good spirits, and all the hard parts had been done, and he just had to do a nice little run with his friend, and that's all it was.
Yeah.
And like, I think it's important to realize, like, it really, like, at that point, when we had reached our breaking points in the first 100 we had done together, there was a point where like our knees were hurting,
Yeah.
and we knew if we kept going, we would have been injured
Right.
for longer than if we had stopped then. And so it was smart to stop in that
Mhm.
race. But Jacob, after that race, went and did physical therapy, got stronger, kept running, and then went out and did another 100. And by that time, I mean, like, as long as his knee wasn't hurting, and as long as like he was still standing, he was just going to keep going.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything else that stopped us that first time.
Yeah.
And so, like, I was never, other than the heat stroke thing, it wasn't a real question.
I remember because we met like kind of in the thick of it,
Mhm.
and I could tell that you were concerned. Your like last plead was, "Are you sure he doesn't need another bottle, another water?" And I had two thoughts. One was, yeah, he probably does need that, and my other thought was, I'm probably going to have to carry that. And so Jacob was like, "No, I don't need it." And you asked me like, "Do you think he needs it?" I'm like, "No, I think he's fine."
I knew you would need it.
And you're right. We did need it, but that was kind of my first interaction, and it was just kind of my first impression was here's a friend who genuinely cares, and I didn't know anything about the prior race in that moment. I learned about that, I don't know, probably like mile 60, and so it like all started to make more sense. Like, here's a friend who's been in the spot that I'm in, other than like you were going through it through yourself. And I'm just curious, like, what were your feelings about seeing him like in that good spirit? Were you happy? Was it like, well, why couldn't we have felt like that before? I'm just curious.
I think it just made sense. Like, there wasn't really any other feeling. It just made sense. Like, he had worked.
He had put in the effort.
He had put in the effort already.
Yeah.
And that was just his victory lap at the end. There wasn't really anything else.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
I mean, he even put in some like 8-minute miles at the end.
Your wife texted like some sub-10s and I think like a sub-7.
Yep. So the last like 3.5, 4 miles, I was like, freak. I hurt so bad.
Yeah.
And now at this point is no different. Running or walking.
Yeah.
I was like, so I could be out here for 2 more hours, or I could be out here for another 35 minutes. And so I just said, and I don't even know if I said anything. I just said, I'm running.
Well, it was gradual.
It was gradual, and I worked into it
Yeah.
because my legs weren't moving very
Yeah.
good. And so I had to like get my legs to open up and take a full running stride.
Right.
Because at this point, we're just on a fire road.
Yeah.
And it's a fire road all the way to the finish line. And so, yeah, I worked into it. That first mile was like a 10 or 11 minute mile. And then I knocked a minute off. And then I knocked another minute
Well, and
off.
this is after we did a huge climb.
Oh, my
So
gosh.
we
Yeah, so
like
you
the
were
first
really
5.
worried about that climb. That's the one thing you mentioned earlier about anticipating the flying monkey. You didn't know about it, but you knew about this climb at the end
I
because
did.
you'd mentioned it several times leading up to the race. So
Yeah.
what were your thoughts when you got there?
That it sucked. So what did I say because I checked my watch before we started the climb because I was curious how bad it actually was going to be.
Yeah.
And when we got to the top, the climb was like 0.6 or 0.7 miles long, and we did like 14 or 1600 feet of vertical gain in that 0.7 miles. And we're 94 miles into a race.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like it was this nice fire road. It was this pretty loose, soft, single track, fall on the edge of this cliff all the way up.
Wow.
And so it sucked. But it was just go 20 feet, stop and breathe for a second because all my muscles are on fire.
Yeah.
Go another 20 feet, stop, breathe, just until we got to the top.
And you got 28 hours, 39 minutes, 36 minutes?
34, 37,
34,
something like that.
somewhere there. First in your division, 37th
7th overall.
overall.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive considering that there was a point where, yeah, you looked pretty rough.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, we passed a bunch of people. Sounds like you passed.
What's impressive is, I don't know if you went and looked at the breakdown, but over the last 40 miles, you consistently improved your position over in the field.
I said this to you at one point. I said, I'm hunting.
Yeah.
Right?
We were snatching souls and just making people move to the side. Like you said, like they heard us coming and they didn't want to try to keep in front of us.
Yep. That was, I think, from once I came alive from that bathroom stop to the end, I only got passed once while we were actually on the trail, and we caught them later on.
Yeah.
And the only other time anyone like got ahead of me was when I was at an aid station.
Yeah.
Which I ended up catching all of them, right? And so from before that, I had gotten past plenty when I was in heat stroke. I got passed by like 30 people during that, right? But after that, it was we're moving and nothing stopping.
It was awesome. I was so glad. It's an interesting thing pacing somebody because it's not your race. You put in, I think I was on my feet for 10 hours.
Mm-hmm.
But my success came when you crossed the finish line.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I felt, I was like at night, I can't remember, it was like at mile 90, you were stuck. And then all of a sudden you jumped to mile 94. I'm like, okay, everything's fine. And then it was like, I got the text that you'd finished, and it was so, I can only imagine what you were feeling having ran 100 miles, but it was super rewarding. So thank you for giving me that opportunity. It is getting cold and dark, but any other closing thoughts that you guys have about the Zion 100? Are we all doing it next year?
No.
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 Okay. I might do it.
Okay.
And James, we're here for you, man. Have you done 100 yet?
No, just the one I attempted.
Okay, well, whatever we need to do to help you get across that finish line, we're here for
I'll
you.
let you know if I have plans.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, thank you for tuning in and watching the Mean Grit podcast. Like, subscribe, and also want to give a big shout out. Sign up for Gaspin and the Aspens if you're in the Utah area, or if you want to fly in for a beautiful race. What other information you want to share about your race?
It's going to be a great race. It's in September through the wonderful Aspen fall colors up American Fork Canyon. It's going to be awesome. It's a UTMB index qualifier, so it's going to be a great race.
He run races. He's a race director, so super happy to be a part of such a cool culture up here on these trails. I mean, it snowed today. It's April, but it snowed, and we're hoping for warmer weather. So Thanks, and we'll talk to you later.